All right, it is 10:01 and I will reopen the board meeting at 10:01. We are going to do a little bit of a schedule change. We have a number of items here that we're going to go ahead and take ahead of item number 13, ahead of that discussion. We're going to go ahead and finish our general agenda as well as hopefully our public hearing, and then finish with the discussion of board order 22-033 or item number 13. So we'll take that last. Okay, so we will go ahead and move on then to item number 14, discussion and consideration of an order in the matter of the appointment of members to Northwest Area Commission on Transportation, and I will carry that one as I am the commissioner liaison to the Northwest Area Commission on Transportation, and we have had some turnover at our local cities, which has led us to not have representation that we should have. So we are looking to appoint the two members that are for our large city, and the two folks that we're looking to appoint. Where did it go in my list? Sorry. Thank you. So we are looking to appoint Aaron Burris as an elected official from a large city, and Nathan George as the staff from the large city, which will be the alternate member. The Northwest Area Commission on Transportation is a committee that coordinates with ODOT. It's an opportunity that we have to be in conversation with ODOT, and it's every 2 months, and they come to let us know what's happening, and we let them know what's going on in our community. So it's a really important communication link with ODOT, and it's important that our county be well represented. So we're excited to have Aaron Burris and Nathan George being willing to be seated and participate on the Northwest Act. Questions or comments, commissioners?
I'm grateful that they're willing.
Okay.
As am I. I remember my days on Northwest Act. We do get a lot done there. We get information on what's happening in transportation issues, not only all around the county, but especially in your region, which is really important. And having good people on Northwest Act representing Tillamook County is extremely important. So I am in full support here.
Perfect. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of an order in the matter of the appointment of members to the Northwest Area Commission on Transportation, I would move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All of those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item number 15, discussion and consideration of amendment number 2 to number 6028 grant agreement number 2019-P-5 transient lodging tax for destination management with the Tillamook Off-Road Trail Alliance for the TORTA 1004 project. Rachel Haggerty.
This is a 1-year extension to TORTA's grant agreement. We received a letter from the U.S. Forest Service District Ranger explaining the delays are on the U.S. Forest Service's end. TORTA has done everything that they are responsible to do, but the consultations with the Fish and Wildlife Service to create these bike trails is just taking a long time. So they are requesting a 1-year extension.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions or comments?
I fully support the extension. I'm excited about the project. I've had the opportunity to walk around there and tour, then see the vision for the bike trails, and I think it's really exciting. I know they've had turnover at the Forest Service, and so they're, again, government moves slowly, but I think it's moving in the right direction.
Perfect.
Yes, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, right?
Right.
But in this instance, I think we can help, and yet TORTA, the Tillamook Off-Road Trail Alliance, they have a terrific vision for what they want to do. Doing it on U.S. Forest Service name, that therein lies some of the problem, but if we can get this done, and I know we can, I think we approved this, Rachel, quite a number of years ago.
Yeah, it's a 3-year agreement.
3-year,
Yeah.
so, but again, I am hopeful that they can get this done, and with the dedication they have from their volunteers, I know they will get it done. And this is a great project, and I'm in full support.
Perfect. As am I. I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of amendment number 2 to number 6028 grant agreement, number 2019-P-5 transient lodging tax for destination management with Tillamook Off-Road Trail Alliance for the TORTA 1004 project, I would move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 16, discussion and consideration of a resolution authorizing the execution of documents concerning granting easements to the state of Oregon. Rachel Haggerty, Chief of Staff.
And I will, item 16 and 17, excuse me, are the same project. So this is a 0.2 acre foreclosed property that the county has had for quite some time. It is currently on our auction list, and it is a designated parks property that is first to be surplus. We have not sold it, and so it sits here waiting to be sold. In the meantime, we have received a request from the Oregon Department of Transportation to acquire a portion of it along Highway 101 in concert with a project that they're doing going through Garibaldi. So before you today is a resolution required by Ticor title for closing that captures your authorization. It's interesting, it says that the three of you who are signing the resolution authorize yourselves to sign the closing document. So I recognize it's an interesting document, but it is the resolution, which is item 16, is required by Ticor. The item 17 is a warranty deed, which is also kind of an interesting document in how it's written. The warranty deed is for a permanent right-of-way acquisition, permanent easement for 676 square feet. And then it also includes within the warranty deed a temporary work area easement of 903 square feet. So this property is right along 101. This is just for the work area where ODOT is requiring this easement, permanent and temporary. They also completed an appraisal and that is full documentation that was provided to us, and they calculated a consideration of $18,200, which upon execution of this, the county would receive. Typically, the county would provide 85% of that to the county parks department, and we would keep the balance in the general fund or our land sale fund to be spent as we choose through ORS 275 or ORS 275 distribution. But with the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Tyler versus Hennepin case, we're proposing just to have that money sit in a fund until there's more clarity on how we can use those funds. So the $18,200 will just be sitting in a fund until later date. So the resolution, item 16, and the warranty deed and temporary easement in item 17 are both ready for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments, commissioners?
No, it sounds like a good use of the property.
Okay.
Thank you, Rachel, for all of your hard work on this. And Bill, I take it you have reviewed all this
I did.
paperwork? So
Yeah, I went and looked at the property.
Okay.
It's on a sharp corner.
Perfect.
It looks like it's actually possibly going to enhance the value of it. And there's a sidewalk. They're putting a sidewalk through the city, so that's a good, it's a good thing for everything. So yeah, I looked at the documents. They're more paperwork than you would ordinarily think is necessary.
I was just going to say.
That's the way it is.
Okay.
Back to those wheels.
ODOT did all the paperwork.
Perfect. Thank you,
Well,
Oda.
that's why we got to keep an eye on that. Just kidding.
Nope.
Just kidding.
Okay,
Ready for a motion?
I am ready for a
And
motion.
Bill, we need to take each one of these separately, correct? 16 and 17.
Please.
Madam Chairman, consideration of resolution number R-23-013 to number 6028 grant agreement number 20. Let me start over again. I apologize. Madam Chairman, consideration of a resolution authorizing the execution of documents concerning granting easements to the state of Oregon, resolution number R-23-013. I would move approval.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, item number 17, which we have discussed. I think we are ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a warranty deed and temporary easement with the State of Oregon Department of Transportation for work at 104 Garibaldi Avenue, Township 01 North, Range 10 West, Section 21 AD, tax lot number 2000, Garibaldi, Oregon. Again, I would move approval.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item number 18, discussion and consideration of a professional services agreement with William K. Sargent for legal services. Rachel Haggerty.
This is a new one-year agreement, extending his services with the county until June 30th, 2024, and also allows for travel expenses going to serving the county.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments, commissioners?
I am grateful for your service, Bill.
If I can say something.
We-
He was
Waiting.
waiting for an opening. I
No,
love it.
I was thinking about this. You know, it was 1991 when I was walking down the street and I ran into later Judge Rick Rolls who said, Bill, I can't do the county council work anymore. My practices won't let me do it. So maybe you ought to think about walking across the street and talking to the commissioners. I did. I actually talked with Debbie's mother, Ida Lane, back when I was a commissioner. Anyway, long story short, I became the contract attorney for Tillamook County in 1991, and I'm not even sure we signed a contract. Honestly, I don't think we did. But anyway, so I served in that capacity since 91 till about 2010 when I became an employee. Back in the day, I spent maybe half of my time on the county and half doing other private work, and I think I kept up with everything. But as time went on, that changed, and that was part of the reason why I became an employee. Not to mention the fact that the benefits were really a big draw. So, you know, as you guys know, then I retired in the end of 2018, and Joel became full-time county counsel, but I was on a contract to help Joel and fill in when he was on vacation. That role has expanded a little bit in the last year in terms of my time, because Joel went down to a lesser amount, and the workload just has certainly not what it was in 1991 but it was probably double. Incidentally, my rate is probably doubled. I think I started with $60 an hour. The $120 an hour is really kind of, it's low, but it's also somewhat close to what Joel makes without, you know, the benefits, so it's somehow commensurate with that. So I enjoy working for the county. I'm happy to be here for another year. I'm proud to say that lots of times things get hung up on the desk of attorneys and they never seem like they're going to get done. And with Joel and me working together, I think we're able to at least keep the paperwork moving and getting things done. So one was saying I'm happy to continue to work in that capacity for another year until we get tired of sitting around.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Well, it's a pleasure to work with you, and I think 32 years of experience working with the county and the institutional knowledge you carry and the relationships you hold, it's extremely valuable to us, and we're lucky to have you. You're a bargain, and I'm glad that you want to continue for the next year. And I wanted to ask you, I've been thinking about the what you just mentioned about the expanded need for legal services in the county, and why that's happened, and I'm just wondering, it seems like our society has become more and more litigious, there are more and more lawsuits, there's more risk, and so I just wondered if you can speak to that for a
Well, I
minute.
think that you summed it up, and I think that agreement with ODOT that you just signed, all the paperwork that was involved with that back in 1991, I don't think it would have happened. They would have just sent us a deed and a temporary easement, and we would have signed it instead of having to go through all of that work. So it's just more complicated than it was 30 years ago. And now it's, you can't be, I try to do what it is to get the work done in accordance with what the board wants to happen. But
Not always possible.
no, but anyway, you can't, that sort of approach, you can't really do that anymore. I've been looked at, see the dance, you've been looked too much, but now there's so much, like you said, Commissioner Bell, people, watching what happens and making sure that everything gets done and public records requests.
Yeah.
You have to spend the time to make sure that what you come up with is something that's correct and defensive.
Thank you.
Yeah, and finally, my workload has gone up. It has gone up. When I first started, I thought it might be like 3 or 4 hours a week. It's turned out to be more like pushing 5 or so. And this week, with Joel on vacation, I'm just working 8 hours a day, and thanks to the short-term rental per day, from the ordinance that I'm Finally, I don't want to, the county's a wonderful client, and that was part of the reason why I became an employee. They're a great client, people. They're working folks, easy, generally speaking, to get along with. You don't have I do not have nearly the stomach upset that I do when I do it with people, private clients. I'm not saying you're not demanding, but it's not as much pressure on council for, I don't think, for at least this government job. I'm not sure that can be said for, county council from Montgomery County or Clackamas County or something like that. But, anyway, the county's great. I'm happy with it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner, any further comments? I think you had already did yours, thank you.
I'm gonna get myself into trouble here.
That's right.
I don't, that's exactly right. I don't always have best thoughts and words for attorneys, but Bill, I just need to tell you. I just need to tell you, Bill, you are a joy to work with.
I think.
Your job is to keep the commissioners out of trouble, and you do that so well. And I'm glad that you're continuing to work with the county on all these issues. The council is we really needed. Since Joel is out of state and you are here, you're attending all of our meetings and all in person, and that eye contact one-on-one is extremely important. So I appreciate you. I don't think you realize how much I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for doing what you're doing.
And I should give some credit where credit is due also. Rachel is, I've said this before, she really helps me keep the workload down because she takes care of so much of the prep work, and I just have to come along and approve it as to form. So that's she's a big help to me.
Thank you again.
Perfect, and thank you, Bill. We appreciate your work, and we know that it is an extremely litigious society, and we more and more have to have not only the general counsel of you and Joel, but special counsel like we've had to do for the short-term rentals. Talking with Marlene at Health and Human Services, they have to have counsel that is specific to issues related to medical. I know that at points we've had to have land use attorneys. I mean, you guys are super busy as general counsel, and even with that, there's more work for the county in our legal risk management, because that's really what it is. It's risk management for the county. It's, as you said, no longer a seat of the pants, it'll be fine kind of world out there. It is absolutely a world where people are looking very carefully for where they can have a successful lawsuit, and the county is one that is, I think, often seen as a deep pockets opportunity. I liaison to the risk management committee for the county, and so we have the opportunity to sit down quarterly and talk with our insurance company and find out who is suing us and for what and how that's being covered and, you know, who's paying for it, all of those things. And we get named in so many lawsuits that really are not about us. There was a city recently where someone had a trip and fall, and they named us as well as that particular city just because they figured, well, it's in the county of Tillamook, maybe there will be something there that I can follow through on. So it is a litigious society, and it's very challenging, and you and Joel get to weed through all of those first and decide what is something we have expertise for, what we need to draw from outside. So it's just a lot of work, so thank you for that. Appreciate
And
it.
remarkably, Commissioner Scarr, you know, the county, you know, in my experience, you know, really hasn't had many successful cases brought against it. So somebody's doing something right, your department heads are doing something right, your staff's doing something right, hopefully your council's doing something right as well.
Perfect. All right, thank you. Yes.
I have one more thing. I was just thinking about this the other day, that society has changed from there was a time when people threatened to sue you, then that, you know, set you up on your heels, like, oh boy, you know. But now, as you just said, so many people threaten to sue, it's like the first tool they bring out of their pocket.
Mhm.
And so the reaction has changed from being afraid of someone saying the words to a risk assessment protocol where you consider, counsel considers, okay, well, if this person follows through and sues us, do they actually have a case? Is there any possibility, or what percentage of possibility that they could be successful if they sue us? And then you respond. So it's very interesting. It's interesting to be on the receiving end of all those threats and then realize, like, this is our new norm.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say you got about maybe 1,000 of those threats last week alone. No kid.
That's true.
500 anyway.
I
Yeah,
agree.
no, that's true, and I think one of the challenges is, you know, as you say, you used to kind of put your back on your heels, but you would then probably try to figure out how to not get sued, right, and have a conversation, and now when we have that, we're going to sue you, or any threat of litigation, it shuts down our ability to go have like a face-to-face, hey, how can we solve this? We hear you're upset. Once litigation is threatened, then that door closes and it becomes attorney to attorney. And so I think that's one of the challenges of our litigious society as well, is that as soon as that happens with a risk, as you say, a risk protocol, we just have to shut down communication and put it in the hands of attorneys rather than being able to do what I think the person is wanting often when they make that threat, is they want to sit down and have some problem-solving conversation. But because of the way our society works, that in fact stops problem-solving conversation. So it's a challenging piece, for sure, for sure. Okay, thank you. Great, robust conversation, and we still have a couple of very big-ticket items on our agenda. So I think we're ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, in consideration of a professional services agreement with William K. Sargent for legal services, I would move it.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, I think that we will go to our public hearing if Treasurer Blanchard is ready, and we'll get that done as well before our final discussion. So I don't have my cheat sheet, but I'm assuming I need to open a public hearing on this. Okay, so we will, do I have to recess the board meeting? Or it's a public hearing inside the board meeting?
So it's a public hearing inside the board meeting. Typically, staff would present anything that she would like, and then you could open it.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Treasurer Blanchard, welcome.
Thank you, and I see that I saw him on there. Wiley Thompson from the 4-H Extension Service District was also on the call today.
Oh, and I didn't read this, sorry. I think I need to read this first, right? So we have a public hearing concerning the proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 budget appropriating funds, imposing ad valorem taxes, and categorizing taxes for fiscal year 2023-2024 for the Tillamook County 4-H and Extension Service District. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Before you is the board order to adopt and appropriate funds, and I impose ad valorem taxes and categorizing taxes for the 4-H and Extension Service District. Meetings were held and publicly noticed, and you discussed it with the 4-H Budget Committee, and I would ask that you read this in once the public hearing is closed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions from staff report before we move into our hearing?
As Sean said, we had a budget hearing and we all approved of the budget, and so this is just a matter of us voting it in.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, then with that, we will open the public hearing at 10:27 a.m. Do we have any public comment for the hearing? We had no public comment online, no public comment in the room. Okay. We will close the public hearing at 10:27 a.m. All right, and then we will move on to item 20, correct? Consideration of an order in the matter of adopting the budget, appropriating funds, imposing ad valorem taxes, and categorizing taxes for fiscal year 2023-2024 for the Tillamook County 4-H and Extension Services District. Are there any further questions or comments at this time?
No.
Good.
Okay, I think we are ready for a motion.
Perfect. So do you want me to read the entire front page?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. So, for the Board of County Commissioners for the Tillamook County, Oregon, sitting as the Board of the 4-H and Extension Service District. In the matter of adopting the budget, appropriating funds, imposing ad valorem taxes, and categorizing taxes for fiscal year 2023-2024. This is Board Order number 23-034, 4-H and ESD Order number 23-002. Whereas the Tillamook County 4-H and Extension Service District Budget Committee has approved the budget for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Tillamook County, Oregon, sitting as the directors of the Tillamook County 4-H and Extension Service District, hereby adopts the budget approved by the Budget Committee for 2023-2024 in the total sum of $1,473,241, which is the aggregate sum of budget requirements for all funds. Be it further resolved that the amounts for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, for the purpose shown on the attached sheet and incorporated by reference herein, are hereby appropriated. Be it further resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Tillamook County, Oregon, hereby imposes the taxes provided for in the adopted budget at the rate of 0.069 cents per $1,000 of assessed value for operations, and that these taxes are hereby imposed and categorized for the tax year 23-24 upon the assessed value of all taxable property within the district. And I would move approval.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we
Thanks,
will
Ron.
now circle back to item 13, which we have moved to the end of the meeting. Item 13 is discussion of Board Order number 22-033 in the matter of temporarily suspending the processing and issuance of new short-term rental permits in unincorporated Tillamook County. We have Sarah Absher, Director of Community Development, here with us, and I'll make one more comment. People online, if you could please remain muted with your cameras off. I know that we have a lot of people that are interested in this conversation, and we're happy to have you joining us, but at this time it is a board conversation, and I know we've kind of been muting people as we go through, but just a quick reminder, this is not a public comment period. Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. For the record, my name is Sarah Absher. I'm the Director of the Tillamook County Department of Community Development. As you're aware, last night, the Commissioners held their public hearing for a second reading of the proposed amendments to Ordinance 84. Now that that second reading has occurred, my thought was to return to the board to start talking about the pause and receive direction from the board as to how you feel this pause should be lifted, when it should be lifted, and how it should be lifted, as we are on the home stretch for the ordinance revision process. As you are aware, in Board Order 22-033, There are a couple of ways that the order could automatically expire that implemented the pause. Those include that it could automatically expire on July 1st if additional board action isn't taken, that the board could end the pause at any time they see fit, or extend the pause as they see appropriate. And then the other piece of that was adoption of the revised amendments to Ordinance 84. We are approaching that July 1st deadline. Last night at the public hearing during the second reading of Ordinance 84, the board continued that hearing to July 6th. And so our timelines now, we need to come back and revisit these timelines to make sure we keep everything moving at the appropriate rate the board would like to see. The department recommends that the pause be extended. I've been working with County Council Bill Sargent and Daniel Kerms, and because we still have a little bit of work to do on Ordinance 84, we are recommending that the board consider a 60-day extension of the pause. With your consent, we would like to bring forward an order for your consideration next week. Captured in the order with the extension would also provide an opportunity for those that were under construction on or before July 1st that now have a certificate of occupancy for their dwelling to have an opportunity to apply for a license following the adoption of the amendments to Ordinance 84. Because we will not meet the July 1st deadline for the adoption of the revised amendments to Ordinance 84, we suggest that if an exception is made to afford those who were under construction to have an opportunity to apply for a license, that not occur until the ordinance ultimately is adopted into whatever form the board feels is appropriate. With that, there's the discussion of the percentages and the caps. So as we discussed last night, there was consideration of what should those cap percentages be, and also as Commissioner Yamamoto briefly touched on, should there be some opportunity for those that were under construction to have an opportunity to enter into the program, and whether or not they should be included in a consideration for a percentage increase in each community, or if that percentage increase should occur after those folks who were under construction have an opportunity to apply for a license. So I'd like to stop there for a minute, see if there's other questions, anything I can answer. I do have current percentages for you of our unincorporated communities, and also a projection of what I feel are potential projects under construction in each of those unincorporated communities. And I'm happy to share that information with you today if you'd like to receive it.
Thank you. Sarah, I'd like to just, as I always like to do, tease things apart just a little bit. So the first one is at this point in time, the pause is set to expire on July 1st. If we do nothing, the department has recommended an extension of 60 days to complete the work that we are currently doing, which hopefully won't take the full 60, but also to give the department time to set the systems up that they will need to implement the new ordinance. So should we begin with that question? Are we comfortable with an extension of the pause to allow us to complete the public hearings we have underway, get the ordinance adopted, and give the department time to be ready to begin accepting applications again? I know that we had hoped, really hoped to be done by July 1, but realistically, we are close, but not quite there. Commissioners?
So with a recommendation of a 60-day extension to the pause, it is, I think I can live with this, but we would need to work diligently to get this pause listed as soon as possible. I know there are things that we need to discuss, and you brought them up. At this point, 2 of them, I'm not sure there may be additional. First of all, for those that held a building permit to build a home within Tillamook County, unincorporated areas, and if they had that building permit issued prior to the imposition of the pause, then they could be eligible for, and again, we had a very minor discussion about this last evening. They could, and in my mind, should be eligible for a short-term rental license, should they so desire. So that's one of the things that is going to tie into this discussion of a 60-day extension to the pause. The other are the conversation of caps. How does all of this work together? And these are where numbers from the Department for Community Development are, to me, are going to be important. I'm not sure that we want to talk about other issues here. Please let me know.
Probably not, David.
Where we want to talk about these two things today. Okay, and I am good with that. Although I'm not sure that we're making no decisions today.
No decisions. Today is purely discussion. So what I think I heard you say is that you are willing to discuss the extension of the pause as long as we are discussing owners who were in the building process during the pause. So I would like to just hold it there for a second and just make sure that we're all on the same page regarding that discussion before we actually get into the meat of that discussion, if that's acceptable. Commissioner Val?
I also support a 60-day extension because we're not ready, and we're moving closer to being ready, but we're not ready, so it wouldn't make sense to let it expire. And I'm hopeful that we'll be ready within 60 days, so that makes sense to me. And I'm also supportive of discussing allowing people to apply for licenses who had building permits at the time that we issued the pause, because this is a good example of how public input influences our decisions, because we heard from so many people who said, we purchased property in Tillamook County, we got a contractor, we got a permit, and all of this was with the assumption that we would be able to develop our property as a short-term rental. And so they're in the process, and we interrupted the process. And so I agree that it seems like those folks should be at the top of the list. I agree with that.
Perfect, and I agree, that's something that we absolutely want to address. I think the challenge that we talked about at the time when we made the decision on the pause and not to include those with building permits was there was no way at that time to know how many of those individuals were intending to move toward short-term rental, nor was there a way to know how many of those individuals, given supply chain and everything else that was happening, would actually be complete before the pause was lifted. And without the ability to do an inspection following a certificate of occupancy, it was also difficult to determine that yes, they could have one. So there were layers of complexity that went into that decision. So I definitely feel for the people who have found themselves caught in that sort of unintended consequence that we do want to find a way forward. That said, I think this is a good conversation for us to have. There is a bit of complexity to it because even sitting here today, we do not know how many of those individuals intend to rent until we actually go out and ask that question. And we don't want to ask that question prior to the submittal or prior to the acceptance of the ordinance, because we would like people who submitted application to come under the new ordinance. So there's a little bit of timing here, I think that Sarah alluded to in her presentation. Ordinance needs to be approved before we give people the opportunity to apply. And then that ties into the cap percentages as well, because we do not know how many people who hold building permits will apply. And just, I know we're trying to not go too deeply into what we did last night, but we talked last night about the golden ticket and not wanting a short-term rental license to become something that is about property value, but rather for it to remain something that is about being a viable part of our economy. So as we look at some of the pieces in the ordinance, we're trying to make sure that we don't make it a golden ticket. We don't make it something that by having one you increase your property value. And that is important in this discussion when we consider how many people had building permits at the time, how many of those people truly and honestly intend to operate a short-term rental, and to have that baked into the ordinance in a way that if you do not, it really doesn't make sense for you to get one. Otherwise, I believe there were something akin to 300 building permits active as of that July date. And I don't think we want to incentivize 300 people to get a permit simply to increase their value. So I think there are some key pieces in teasing that apart. And if we're unable to sort of figure that number out, it will impact our 1% or 2% or whatever we're talking about in a cap. As we've discussed in the hearings, this is a very complex process with lots of interconnected pieces, and this is one of those sets of interconnected pieces. Lifting the pause, offering those with permits as of July 1, the opportunity to get it, to step in for a license with priority, and then the caps on top of that. And if we are looking by community at percentages, and we're giving increases 1% in each unincorporated community, the numbers again become challenging. So as we discuss, again, lots of things to tease apart in this to think about how we would like to lift the pause. So I think we're agreed we would like to extend so we have time to finish the ordinance. We would like to find a methodology for consideration for those who were underway with building on July 1, and ensuring that we have a way that we do not incentivize everyone with a permit to go, or everyone with a building permit to go get a license. So we need to figure out what that looks like.
So to your final point, it seems like last night we talked about a use it or lose it clause in the ordinance. And I realize we're not talking about the ordinance revision right now, but if we have the use it or lose it clause, people will not be incentivized to get a license just to hold it.
Correct, and I think that's something that we did instruct Sarah to provide us with some possible language around use it or lose it, so that we could consider whether that might be a tool we wanted to have. So we will be having that conversation on July 6th to really look into that use it or lose it language. I will share that the committee talked about that. We talked about, is it a one night use it or lose it? Is it a 30-night use it or lose it? Is it more or less than that? So I think that's something we'll want to look at as well and see if that fits.
You may want to cut me off here, Bill. And,
Should I just do it, or should I just do it?
or
Should I just do it right now?
You might, you might.
Closer.
One other discussion that is going to determine how we do this, if indeed we're going to allow those that had a building permit prior to our initiation of a pause, could be transferability. And again, I don't know whether we want to have that conversation now, whether we should have that conversation now, or whether we should hold that conversation.
Mr. Cairns is online, and Sarah and I, being the readers of tea leaves that we are, kind of anticipated that you might not get done with the hearings process. So as a consequence, we presumed that the board wouldn't want to make it the Wild West and have it expire on the end of the month and have everybody who's out there waiting come in and grab an STR license under the old regime. So we've worked on some drafts, so we're at least anticipating this discussion, that are going to hopefully give you some opportunities to flesh that out and see if you're happy with it. But I think the concept has been, at least staff, that if you do decide to do something with the building permit people, that they would be under the new regime, meaning if you leave the ordinance as presently drafted in terms of no transferability for the people who come in
For
later
new
on, that would be
licenses.
at least one possibility. That was the possibility that we were working on primarily, that they'd come in under the terms of whatever the new ordinance is, and they'd have to live with those.
I'm glad the attorneys are way ahead of me here.
Well, I know we are.
That's good.
But
So, yeah, just
we
asking.
knew that we didn't know this, but it was we felt fairly certain that the board, being the deliberative body that it is and wants to make sure that they've heard all the evidence and make an informed decision,
Okay.
likely wouldn't be done with the hearings by, although I know you wanted to be done,
Yep.
but it was gonna be really difficult for you to be done.
So you would, I think what I'm hearing you say, Bill, is that, you know, this discussion will happen, it maybe doesn't have to happen today.
Right, right.
Perfect.
You know, the devil's in the details, like we were talking before. We'll try to put
Okay.
together some proposed order for you, and you can look it over, and probably next week, would be, or soon thereafter, so that if you don't like it, or you wanna talk about it some more, we have an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and get it all
Okay.
done before the end of the month.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
It does, and I think my question would then be, you know, with the order lifting the pause, is it simple a step for us, because we are not yet done with the hearings process, to simply have a very simple order next week that extends the pause for 60 days and does not yet address the percentage caps, does not yet address those who had a building permit at the time of the pause, but perhaps is a straight 60-day extension, that then a second board order following the adoption of the ordinance could then be done that would address those other issues.
Thank you, Commissioner, yes. I think that is absolutely possible. We could come forward with a simple order next week, and then following the outcome of the July 6th hearing, we could come back with a proposal that helps also address those properties that were under construction on July 1st, on or before. With that, then, we should have a better understanding of what we could potentially be looking at for those who are interested in applying that meet those criteria that we could then list in a future board order. I would, with your permission, I would encourage those who are listening today who may be one of those properties to reach out to me in an email and let me know they are interested in that, just so, like I said, I do have some estimate numbers for each community is based on what we've pulled in building permit records, but it would be good to know if we can start better understanding who those properties are for sure. And then with that, would recommend perhaps once the ordinance is adopted in its amended form, that then moving forward, we consider giving those folks a couple of weeks to come in and apply for a license so that we can then actually see how many there are in relation to the conversation about caps. The only other thing I would offer is if the ordinance itself discusses that, you know, caps will be established by board order, I would ask Mr. Kearns, who's joining us by phone, or Mr. Sargent, if we have to have those percentages in place at the time the ordinance revisions are adopted. That's the only thing with that specificity. I'm not sure how those two pieces fit together.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Kearns or Mr. Kearns,
Yeah.
Mr. Sargent's nodding. If you could address that one, that would be helpful.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. I'm sorry I don't have an internet connection today, so I'm doing the old fashioned way. The mechanics of all of this kind of gave me a headache, partly because if the percentage, when the discussion of percentages relates to caps, and in order for us to give you a clear idea of what your current pool size is in each of these geographic areas, we needed to know what that pool size was so that you could figure out what 1%, 2%, or whatever percentage would look like. So we could construct a table. In order to construct this table, we needed to know how many of these people in the construction building permit category would be in that pool. And so my initial recommendation, initial inclination is to extend the pause at that point in time, kind of amend that initial pause board order where you had the exception for people who are in a property transaction at the time, also amend it to include people who are in construction permit at the time, give them like a 3-week window to make their application, so that when you get back and adopt a final ordinance amendment and set of caps, you know what they are, you know what the numbers are, rather than leaving it, these numbers will be until you know what these construction people, how many there are, and how many perfect their application. So only then will you know what the pool size is. So that was my recommendation, kind of my inclination first of this, and which would mean I think you're letting before the politics.
Dan, we're losing you.
21st is the last meeting you have to take action before the pause expires. So my inclination was to recommend you let the in that time, give them 3 weeks to perfect their applications.
Okay, so Dan, we're having trouble hearing you. You're fading in and out. Can you hear us? Dan, can you hear us? I don't think so. I think we've lost Dan.
Well, I'd like
Can you hear
to.
me?
Oh, you're back.
Yeah, Dan, we're getting every third or fourth word. Are you hearing us?
Okay. Can hear you. So the coordination, the mechanics of this that are different concerns. You need to know before you can really set caps, I believe.
Thank you. Okay, so I think what we've heard is that this is a stepped process. The extension of the pause for 60 days, which could have a clause in it that would indicate upon passage of the ordinance, then those who had a building permit would have 3 weeks following that date to apply for a short-term rental license. Once we have those applications in hand and have determined which ones have a complete application, then we visit the cap percentage so that we have the full pool size, because the pool would include existing plus the new folks who had building permits. We use those numbers then to determine cap percentage. I think that's what I heard from Dan. Okay, so that was his recommendation. Let's discuss.
But I thought I heard something different from Dan. So Dan, if you can hear us, please correct me if I'm wrong. What I thought I heard him say is that when we extend for 60 days, within that extension, if we agree to this, we say people who held building permit when we made the original decision had the next 3 weeks to come in and apply, so that we will know when we get to the ordinance revision, we'll have all those numbers, so that when we get to the ordinance revision, we can make a decision on the cap that's informed by the numbers, because those people will already have applied. So that's what I thought I heard him say.
Exactly. That's my recommendation. Yeah.
So Dan, are those people then not applying under the old ordinance, and are they not then eligible for the previous ordinance permit?
My original inclination was they come in the same status as people who were in property transactions on July 1st, 2022. But that's all.
So Dan, I don't know if you're still hearing us. I think the question we have on the table is if they apply prior to the new ordinance being approved, are they subject to the rules in the new ordinance, or are they subject to the rules in the old ordinance?
Old.
And you're
The
suggesting,
old ordinance.
okay, so you're suggesting that we issue those under the old ordinance, which would give them transferability. It would not include use it or lose it should we choose to add that to the new ordinance. It would place them under the old ordinance.
But it's your call.
Yes, it is.
People who are in property.
Yeah, we're not hearing them.
Yeah, Dan, we really can't hear you. We're picking up every couple of words.
If I may, so one other thing I would like the legal minds to consider here is the issue of limited ownership. We discussed that last evening, and I think that decision kind of needs to be blended in if indeed we're going either way. So if we use the old ordinance for people that had a building permit before we initiated the pause, that's one thing. If we're utilizing the new ordinance, then of course we have to have that discussion about transferability, as Bill discussed earlier. But I think the limited ownership discussion that we had last night is also going to make a decision as to how many people might apply for a for a license, a short-term rental license. So I think we've got a couple things moving here, some moving parts that we need to consider as we move forward before we make a decision on caps.
Sarah, you look like you have a.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Scott. My recommendation would be, especially with the technical difficulties, is that we move forward with just your suggestion, a very simple ordinance that extends the pause 60 days. This gives us another week, based on the
Yep.
feedback we've heard today, to come back to you next week
Okay.
with a couple of proposals that include what it looks like if we afford those folks in new construction an opportunity to apply before the amendments are adopted, and a process if you would prefer to see them able to come in after the amended revisions are adopted. With that, another suggestion that we could bring forward for your consideration could be, we received testimony about 1%, 2%, perhaps with those construction properties, it's a 2% calculating or figuring them in. I think there's a lot of ways we could come back next week and give you some additional options, but I do feel like the priority right now is just simply to figure out what you want to do with that July 1st expiration date.
Okay, so when you started talking, you just said a simple ordinance to extend, but I think you meant order.
I did, thank you so much, Commissioner Hall.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think we
Yeah.
can cook up some alternatives for next week too, if we wanted to.
So you could have, so I think having a board order that very simply extends the pause for 60 days is something that we will have, or that I would like us to have for next week, with the intent to take action on that order next week, unless you bring an order that has, hey, we're gonna do the 3 weeks, here's how it's gonna work, and we feel good about that. It sounds like what you're suggesting, council, is that we could actually have 2 or 3 orders prepared and select one for passage next week. Is that
Right.
what you were suggesting?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Because, again, Dan knows way more than I do, but.
Right.
But it sounded like his recommendation was to try to cook up a combination order, and I'm not sure exactly,
What that looks like.
why he's there, but.
Okay. So, given our technological difficulties, I would suggest, if commissioners are amenable, we would ask for an order simply extending the pause for certain to be prepared for next week, and acknowledge that it is our intention to extend the pause through the process and through the department's need to prepare to accept applications. We would also like a potential order that addresses those who had a building permit at the time of the pause, with whatever you and Dan, the best legal minds, say. Do they go under the old ordinance or do they go under the new ordinance? If there is a risk factor there that we need to be thinking about, that has Dan placing them under the old ordinance. Otherwise, I think that from the board's perspective, we have talked about placing them under the new ordinance so that they fall into the same non-transferability, et cetera. Is that so?
I agree with that, and I wonder if you guys can consider, can we offer them the opportunity to pre-apply in the next 3 weeks, at 3 weeks following the board order, to pre-apply for a license under the new ordinance? So we collect the numbers, and when we pass the ordinance revision, those people could be issued licenses under the new ordinance, the revised ordinance.
Or could we just ask them to get on a wait list?
Right.
And then open that Whichever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. We will absolutely vet that. I think we will look at that in relation to even going on a wait list. Does that then put them in a position to where they're under existing regulations? Because if you are really wanting any licenses issued moving forward to fall under the revised amendments to the ordinance, we want to make sure we factor that in. So yes, we will absolutely vet all of that.
Okay, perfect, thank you, because I know for myself, I would like them to fall under the new ordinance if in any way possible, right? I think we're making these changes for very intentional reasons, and if we pull in another batch of people under the old ordinance, it's setting us back from what we're trying to do. So I understand the desire to move forward and to get folks, so we have that number. I just want to make sure my perspective would be, I want them under the new ordinance, so.
Yeah, I agree with that, and it influences what we decide for a cap. Because if they come in under the revised ordinance, then I'm willing to consider those folks coming in and the 1% cap, because there were a lot of people in the community who asked for a 2% cap. And so if we look at new construction plus the 1%, I think that might very well address everyone's concerns. But if it really depends on how many people they are and whether it's the old ordinance or not.
Thank you. And with that, so Mr. Kearns did confirm he is listening, and we will put these things together for you. Also, just looking at calendar logistics. So today is the 12th. The upcoming hearing is the 6th, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. It is 3 weeks. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm in July. So if that is something that bringing that back next week, the timing with that next hearing would fall very close to that July 6th hearing date if you prefer to take that type of an action through board order next week. To look at the opening up a list for construction of properties in correlation with the caps in the ordinance. So if we set a 2 or 3 week timeline for a wait list or whatever that is, that's going to fall, my point is it's going to fall very closely to the next hearing.
And my suggestion would just be that if we do that, let's make sure we know where they're gonna fall under the ordinance, and if the sentence needs to be upon passage of the ordinance, a 3-week window will open.
Yeah.
And I think that's an easy way, that if we get caught up in July 6th, then we're still not done.
Right.
I mean, I think that's part of, for me, as I wanna make sure we build this out so that hopefully we're not having to keep coming back and fix this, right? Let's set a time frame of 60 days we think we can meet. Let's set a time frame for that, opportunity for people to come into application if we want it under the new ordinance, to assure it will be under the new ordinance. So I think that's my concern, because I wanna move quickly as well. We don't wanna drag this out any longer than we have to.
And I do want to see your research, Sarah, on the permits that were in effect a year ago, 11 months ago, and where they are in the county. So if you have that, you can share it with us individually. I'd love to see it before the meeting next week.
Certainly, Commissioner, and just so the commissioners and the public know how we've been able to pull that data with those estimates, it's based on the certificates of occupancy that have been issued by the department from July 1st of 2022 when the pause went into effect to May 31st of this year. So that's how, with our e-permitting, our state program, unfortunately, I cannot run as of July 1st who had an active building permit. So what we're looking at is who received a certificate of occupancy following implementation of the pause. So that is the best. We've spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how we can pull data for you, and that has been the best way.
Interesting. Okay,
So just when you see those numbers, that's how they will be derived.
all right. Thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
So I just want to make it clear here, so we're doing a list of people that are expressing an interest of getting a short-term rental license, that had a building permit or an occupancy permit between July 1, 2022 and May 31st of 2023.
That is how, Commissioner, I am pulling my estimates to share with you how many licenses per each community I think we may receive with that exception.
And this is not a pre-application, because a pre-application would indicate that they're doing this under the old ordinance.
Correct. So the big question is, if we allow them to go onto a wait list
Yep.
without the
So
ordinance
yes.
being adopted, does the wait list action in and of itself still place them into the current ordinance as it's written? Or can we create that wait list?
So that I think is
Question for
something that the
legal
legal
minds.
minds is
That's
going
right.
to discuss.
Right, so between now and the next
Yep.
meeting, the legal minds will have the answers for us to those
There you
key
go.
questions.
That's why they get the big bucks.
Correct, and they will have board orders prepared for us as options that are informed by the information in those key questions. You will also bring the numbers of occupancy permits that were issued, which will give us a sense of magnitude. I think in our meeting, we talked about 300. Granted, some of those are in cities and other, and you have to manually tease that apart. So we appreciate the time you will take to manually tease that apart and let us know how many for each community, because I do think that that plays in 100% to the percent caps that we want to consider, because we're talking about growth management, and if, depending on where these are and how many they are, it could cause significant growth in particular communities if we open the door and say, yes, everyone's in, and we don't have other tools that end up getting adopted regarding transferability, regarding use it or lose it, regarding single ownership, things that are all in conversation in relation to the ordinance that could reduce the number of people who are likely to get a license or apply for a license that may or may not end up in the ordinance. So lots of moving parts all at once.
Okay, it's off of us, so the smart people in the room are gonna have to work on all this and get it to us for next Wednesday.
Smart
It's
people.
why we
are on.
extended Bill's contract.
That's right. So we knew we had more work for Bill to do.
No, primarily more work for Mr. Karen.
There you go.
Okay, are there other things related to lifting the pause that we wanted to address today in discussion so that we could provide our better minds, as we have just said, to bring back to us next time?
I have nothing more this time.
We're good.
I just want to thank you for the conversation today and the direction. So we will move to work, and we will work on those orders and get them to the office by noon on Friday so they can be posted for public inspection. So 10, thank you.
That's right, that's Friday.
Yeah, right. Our better minds have a short window of time in which to do their work, because we do have to have it. Okay, if we are done with that agenda item, I will move us on to board concerns. Do we have any board concerns today?
So many.
So many. Okay, Commissioner Bell, none to share.
I'm good for right now, thank you.
Okay, and I will pass on board concerns as well. So board announcements. The Commissioners will hold a board briefing on Wednesday, June 14th, 2023 at 2 p.m. to discuss weekly Commissioner updates. The meeting will be held in the Board of Commissioners Meeting Room 106 in the Tillamook County Courthouse, 201 Laurel Avenue, Tillamook, Oregon. The teleconference number is 1-971-254-3149. Conference ID 736-023-979 #. Juneteenth is an observed holiday for the county and the Oregon State Circuit Court. All county offices in the Tillamook County Courthouse and the Tillamook County Library, administrative offices in the jail, and the Health and Human Jail and Justice Facility, Public Works Department, Department of Community Development, Surveyor's Office, and the Health and Human Services Department and clinics, and the Circuit Court will be closed on Monday, June 19th, 2023. The local Public Safety Coordinating Council, LPSCC, or LPSC, meeting and teleconference scheduled for Monday, June 19th, 2023 at 12 p.m. has been canceled. Okay, I think if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we will adjourn this meeting today at 11:10 a.m. Thank you.